I will be forever the myth.
You're the king of kings, Arnold.
There's always a pecking order. The little packers never mess with the big packers. So I'm a rooster, and he's a chicken, so to speak.
So let's go to the 1980 Mr. Olympia now. This was the big controversial Olympia. I know you and I have talked a little bit about this by email, and now it's like 35 years later, and this is still probably the most controversial, one of the most controversial Mr. Olympias ever. Did you know that Arnold was going to compete in that show before the contest?
You know what? If I'd have been smart, I would have realized, but I was a dummy. I didn't. I was so. Let's go back. Let's back up to the first Miss Olympia contest.
Right.
It was in 1980 in Philadelphia. George Snyder put it on. Okay, so this is shortly before the Mr. Olympia, and you had myself, Frank Zane, Mike Mincer, and I think Ron Tufel guest host. Okay, so we're all in good shape. And that was right after Frank had his accident.
Yeah.
So he was lacking, okay? Because he'd been in a hospital for about 10 days. He had lost a lot of weight. And Arnold was there, and we had a trade show. It had supplement companies. I was with Bodymaster, so we had our equipment on display there. And I recall Arnold, it was so important for Arnold not to miss a workout that he was down there working out in the area where we had the trade show. And he had a film crew following him around. I never paid any attention to it. So I just totally dismissed it. And then I remember George Snyder, because I did a lot of business with George Snyder. He had Olympus Health Clubs at the time, and he was franchising. We sold a ton of equipment to those guys. So I was on the phone with George almost every day. And he's saying, he says, I know who's going to win the Mr. Olympia. He said, I got it written down, and I got it on a piece of paper locked in my safe. I said, well, that's good. I'm amazed that you know who's going to win. I never thought about it. But you got to remember, in those days, they had a thing called the association. It was Arnold, George Snyder, Franco Columbo, and Bill Drake. Okay? But I'm not, maybe I'm just naive in those days. Never paid any attention.
What was the association, Boyer?
Well, in other words, what they did, they formed an association where you got a discount on supplements, gym equipment, and sports clothing and stuff like that. Okay. And then they would get a piece of it. So, I sold them a lot of equipment at a discount, and they in turn, turned me on to customers. And I'm sure that the supplement companies and on down the line did the same thing. But to answer your question, I didn't realize that Arnold was going to enter the Mr. Olympia until the night before, because Bill Pearl called me. Told me, he said, I just want to let you know Arnold's going to enter the contest. I said, well, okay. And then, and I know this has been discussed a million times, and people will argue about it. And you're right, it's over 30 years old. I don't know why people continue to argue about it. And their opinions are very strong, but you got to remember, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one,
Right.
But and most of the people that want to argue about it so energetically weren't even born in 1980. But the thing is this. I remember sitting back there at the pre-judging, and Mike Mincer and I are sitting there talking, and we see Arnold, and the best way I can describe it, he looks thin. And I even remember telling Mike, I said, I don't know why Arnold's doing it. This is a shame. He's going to lose. Why ruin risk his reputation? Everybody had high regard for Arnold. Well, fast forward, as it turns out, Arnold won. And everybody makes big deals about Mike and Arnold almost having coming to blows at the pre-judging meeting. That was, the thing was how it all got started, and I'm sure you've heard it.
Yeah.
We had all agreed the year before there would be no height classes. No, it's an open contest.
Yeah, no under 200, over 200.
Yeah, and I explained that to Ben Weeder, and he says, you're absolutely right. We're just going to have one. So we get there, and Arnold says, no, we want 2 classes. So whatever amount of people they had in the contest, maybe they said they had 17 people in the contest. So we all voted ahead of time. 16 people said, no, we want it open. Arnold wanted 2 classes. So trying to be a diplomat, I stood up and I said, okay, Arnold, we're going to give you the floor. Explain to us why you think it's going to be, you want 2 classes. What's the reason? And instead of saying, okay, well, boy, this is my reason, he says, well, why don't you talk like a man? And I'm thinking, well, hell, I'm giving you an opportunity to say something. And that's when Mike blew up. I guess he had gotten tired of it. He jumps in there. And it probably would have come to blows because Mike was pretty mad. Mm-hmm. Had Bill Pearl not stepped between Mike and Arnold, all hell would have broke loose. And the way Arnold was sitting, and if Mike would have hit him, it would have taken Arnold's head off because he was right over him, and Arnold was just sitting down with his hands. Right. But I mean, as it turned out, everybody. I will think this in retrospect. If Arnold had to do it over again, he wouldn't have done it because it cost him a lot of friendships, and it definitely colored his reputation. Mm-hmm. Maybe not quite as mad as the thing having an illegitimate kid with the maid, but nevertheless, it put him down a much lower notch in the guys that had always held him in high regard.
What did Arnold say to Mentor to get him so mad? Where Mentor came walking over to him.
Well, he gets off the subject. He says, "Well, everybody knows why you didn't win last year." He says, "Your gut's too big," and that's when it really got started.
Okay.
I think if I remember correctly, Mike might even cocked his arm back. He was ready to punch him. And
really?
That's when Bill Pearl stepped between.
So Bill Pearl was the one that stepped in and stopped it.
Yeah, exactly. Bill Pearl was, and then after Ben Weeder saw that it was safe, then he jumped in and tried to. he was very careful not to get in between Mike and Arnold right away.
Until the timing was right.
Yeah, exactly.
So going through the prejudging of that show, then did you feel like Arnold? You said he wasn't at his best. Did you feel like he had a chance to win? Who did you think was going to win the show? Well,
it's interesting. And only I can offer you an opinion.
Yeah.
I would say this. Once again, I thought Chris looked good, and Chris obviously came out second.
Yeah.
But I never picked Chris as the winner. I don't know why. Frank was in good shape. He had improved a lot since 2 weeks ago at the Miss Olympia, but he was still a little thin. I thought Mike was in excellent shape. And I was in excellent shape at so I don't think I can't recall Mike or anybody else saying, I should have won the Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
But everybody was in agreement that Arnold shouldn't have won.
Right.
There was honestly, if I would have been a judge, I would have had Arnold probably somewhere around 6th or 7th place.
I wanted to ask you, Boyer, about going back to 1980. Some people may not know this, but CBS Television was there to film the show, as back then in the late 1970s, ABC Wide World of Sports was usually filming the Mr. Olympia, and then NBC and CBS got involved, and then CBS was there filming it in 1980, and then that footage was never used. And you did get to see that footage, though, didn't you?
I did. There was only 4 people that I recall saw that footage. This is what happened. Prior to the Mr. Olympia, CBS sent a film crew and spent 2 days with who they assumed might be the top competitors. They spent 2 days with Mike Mentzer, 2 days with Dennis Tenorino, 2 days with me, and there might have been 2 days with Chris Dickerson. I'm not quite sure. So that film crew, I knew they had been to my home, spent the whole day with me, and then that same film crew went over to Sydney to film the contest, and the guy. Let me think of the guy's name. I'll remember the guy that was there. His name will come to me in a minute. But he was there, and he called me in Sydney after the contest, and he says, "I'd like to have a meeting with you and Frank and Dennis and a couple of other people. He said, we're never going to be able to show this on TV. He said, it's just too controversial. So, I said, okay, that's just the way, that's the end of it.
Now, why did he say that, Boyer? Why did he say it was too controversial?
Because it was obvious to him that Arnold didn't deserve to win, and they didn't want to put something so controversial, even to the average person sitting in the audience, to realize, hey, something's wrong here. This is not right. So I never thought any more about it. So Sherm Egan, that was the guy's name. He was the guy that was producing the thing for CBS. So somehow or another, he calls me later that year because I'm in New York, and he says, if you'd like to see the uncut version, the unedited version of this thing, he says, meet me at CBS, and I'll let you watch it. So I contacted Wayne. Wayne, his wife at the time, Karen, Chris Dickerson, and one of Chris's buddies. We went and watched the thing. And I didn't realize what a great difference it was until you're sitting watching the thing. And that's when it really was apparent, hey, something is wrong here. And they said, this is it. We're not going back. So even though they paid the sanction fee for 1981, they never went back. And as far as I know, they've never filmed anything related to bodybuilding ever again.
So what was your opinion of the footage, Boyer? What did you see when you saw it?
Well, I mean, it stuck out just as much as I had experienced. I mean, Arnold was by far not in his best shape. And as I said, two things I noticed that stood out in watching Arnold. He looked thin, okay, but he also looked unbelievably nervous. He was not confident. He's always been noted for being very, very confident in charge. He was not. Even with all the judges in his pocket, he was still unsure of how the crowd was going to react, and they did react quite negatively when they announced the results of the contest. But it didn't affect him. He went on. I mean, let's give him credit. I remember Mike Minster telling me, and this was in 1981. He says Arnold was in the Rose Cafe, which is right down the street from Gold's, and at the time, Mike's girlfriend happened to be in the Rose Cafe getting something to eat, and Arnold's telling him, he says, those bodybuilders think that they're gonna boycott to Mr. Olympia. He said, before it's all over with, he said, they're all gonna be kissing my ass and they'll be in the contest. And he was right. And that's why I've always said the only people that I really think had credibility then was Mike Minster, Frank Zane, myself, and Albert Beckles, because we stood by our decision. We wasn't going to be part of it.
You were in the Mr. Olympia in Sydney, Australia.
Not much to say. Not much to say.
Not much to say.
I'm gone. My God.
So you were in that show. Did you know beforehand that Arnold was going to compete in it?
Yeah. Of course. He told me. He told me.
Oh, he told you. Okay.
I can say that now.
Yeah.
He told me more likely than not I'll be there. So you should do this, and you should do this, and you should make sure you have this and that and the other. So if I'm not there, you still have to make sure that you're doing this and you're. So when we turned up to get on the flight for us to Sydney, Arnold was there with Gold and a few other guys, and I said, So he's not going there. I said, so you're gonna compete? He said, I don't know. Maybe I'll stay in the audience. Okay, Arnold. You just told me that you're gonna go. Now you told me you don't know. Well, which is it? I said, I seriously, I don't know. I think he was trying to size up the guys or get into their heads or something.
Yeah.
So we went backstage with Maria. When we got there, I remember he came into the dressing room. He said he's gonna compete. So it was a decision made privately, I guess, even before he stepped on the plane. And it was intended as a surprise, keep everybody guessing.
Yeah.
So when he was in the dressing room, and I see him coming down the stairs with Maria, I said, okay, he's going to compete. He walked in the dressing room, went in the corner and started warming up. And I think that is what caused the arena to be filled.
Yeah.
And the Sydney Opera House is not small.
Right. Hey,
And I
Roy,
think everybody heard.
talk a little bit about that meeting also, the meeting where they had the with all the competitors, where they're talking about having 2 classes in the Mr. Olympia again, or going to 1 class, and Arnold and Mike Mentzer got into it a little bit. Do you remember that?
Remember, we said at the beginning of our conversation that when they first came into bodybuilding, there was no animosity.
Yeah.
I witnessed it firsthand there.
Mm-hmm.
You could feel it.
Yeah.
You feel it in the room, and that's not me.
Yeah.
I didn't like what I was feeling. Mike, he's not with us anymore, but he didn't particularly like Arnold's rhetoric a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and he let it known. He let it be known. I don't think Frank did either, because since Frank had beaten Arnold, they had become good friends. And Arnold liked when he was winning the 3 Olympias in a row, and then he made one mistake. Arnold just said to him in the interview, "So Frank, what does it feel like to win your 3rd Olympia?" I would have said, "Man, it feels like heaven. I'd like to get to 6," something like that.
Yeah.
Frank said to Arnold, "It feels just like when I beat you in Florida.
Right.
You don't say those things."
Right. Right.
And I say, love Frank, you don't say those things. Don't say them to Arnold.
Right.
He
Right.
will never forget. And they didn't speak since that day.
Really? Wow.
No, since that day they didn't speak. And so then there was something also in Frank's mind about the Arnold competing, and that nobody said it's going to be fixed. Everybody thought, well, we're going to whoop him.
Yeah.
Not me. Other guys thought, Mike thought he was going to beat him. Boyer thought he was going to beat him. Frank thought he was going to beat him.
Yeah.
We know how it turned out. It was a little bit embarrassing, but and because it was filmed for ABC television, it never made the television.
Right. Right. They never showed it. Yeah.
That was embarrassing. Yeah. So the mission was accomplished. I don't know if it was to say to the guys, "Listen, I don't care what you say about me. I can come back and I can beat you in another shape." And we always have a big feast after. That feast was on a boat.
Uh-huh.
And the only people there were Tom Platz and myself.
Really? That was it? No one else?
Yes. Again, Tom Platz, my girlfriend at the time, and guests. I'm talking about from our community.
Yeah.
The bodybuilding community was not well represented.
Wow. No kidding.
I think the corny went, but it wasn't well represented.
Yeah. So what did you think of Arnold's physique when you saw him get up on stage, or when you saw him backstage pumping up?
I was scared.
Yeah?
Yeah, because he's going to get beaten. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen. That's how I felt.
Did you feel he was...
So in a way, I was glad it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And another way I thought, this is not, you're going to take a black eye for this thing.
Uh-huh.
And we did. But I felt scared. I like the guy. We go way back. Aaron and I go way back.
Yeah.
He's always helped me. So I don't want this to happen. I didn't want this to happen. It's 20 years later, man. This guy is... I don't want that to happen a lot. But it happened.
Yeah.
And people still talk about it. There's no need to talk about it. It was... The judging panel, I thought, was not a very experienced one. But whether they were experienced or not, if they were told what to do and had to happen this way, fine.
Yeah.
But don't let us go there thinking we have a chance.
Yeah.
But then you can't. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah.
He was asked to come, and he was probably promised that if he comes, he will win. I don't know if the promoter is still alive. The promoter's name was Paul Graham.
Yes. Yeah.
He was also the promoter when I won the Miss Universe, the professional Miss Universe.
That's right. Yeah.
It was a very sad day, but I think that the sport has recovered somewhat, although the dynamics have changed.
Yeah.
Recovered somewhat from that.
Okay. So how did you feel your condition was, Roy? I thought you looked great in that show. I thought that was the best you ever looked up to that point.
Really?
Yeah, I thought you looked awesome.
I didn't think so. So if you look at me, I look at myself. I said, you didn't even show it, bro. I don't think so at all.
No. So you and Roger Walker tied, right? Didn't you guys have a special pose down because you guys were tied in the points or something?
Yes, we had to go back and have a try. I would have been grateful to be sixth. I still considered I was sixth, but for the purposes of the competition, they had to break a tie.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had no trouble with Roger getting sixth because he had become Australian.
Yeah.
And it would have been good. So I was glad that he got it.
Yeah. Okay. What did you think of some of the other guys in the show that night, like Boyer Coe and Frank Zane and Mike Menser and Chris Dickerson?
I only remember one thing. That's anger. Because I was backstage, see?
Yeah.
So I remember one thing. That's a whole room full of anger, man.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to, you don't. That's why I said to you, it changed from a sport of real camaraderie to real. You don't need that in the dressing room.
Yeah.
But that is what it was, and that is what it had become that day. But look at it logically. 1 year later, it was forgotten, and even yours truly. I said no. Everybody forgot about it. Arnold came home, hosted the universe in Philadelphia, I think.
Yeah.
And time passed, time heals, but that one healed really fast because everybody turned up in Columbus the next year, hoping to win, including yours truly. I went and trained like an animal for that thing.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Saying that it cannot happen 2 years in a row.
Right.
Everybody was saying that can't happen. We're back to normal. They're not Arnold.
Julian Blumar phoned me from Belgium, and he said, "You're entering in Mr. Olympia," and I said, "No." And this was shortly before the Olympia.
Okay.
I said, "No." He said, "Why not?" And I said, "I haven't been invited," which was true. The next thing, I get a phone call from Ben Weeder. And Weeder said, "What do you mean you haven't been invited?" I said, "Paul Graham asked me a few minutes after the Mr. Universe if I wanted to compete this year, and I said at this moment in time, not really." He said, "Well, it doesn't matter whether you want to or not." He said, "You're a current world champion. You must have an invite."
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Back then, whoever won the Mr. Universe would automatically be invited to Mr. Olympia.
Yeah. So I started something off then, like there's Blue Mark phoning, there's Ben Weeder phoning. They're both phoning Paul Graham and having to go at him. So I received the invites. I thought I'd better go then.
Right.
I think I placed 12th or 13th. I know I tied with Casey Viator.
Okay.
We tied for some place or other, but I can't remember if it was 12th or 13th. I think Samir Bannout was 14th, Ken was 15th. But if I came in my best condition, I very much doubt if I would have made the first six.
Yeah, it was a very, very tough contest that year.
Oh, they're all there. They're all there.
Yeah. And weren't you standing next to Arnold in the lineup, Roy?
Yeah, I stayed between Boyer Coe and Arnold. I picked the best players on the stage, didn't I?
Yeah, right. I remember that. I remember you standing right next to him.
Why couldn't I be at the other end? But we pulled numbers out of a hat.
Yeah.
And that's what we had. That was our position. So it was fair. It wasn't fixed or anything like that, where you stand or...
Right.
You know.
So did you know Arnold was going in it when you made the trip over there?
No.
Okay.
He's supposed to go over as a judge. But,
okay.
Yeah.
So,
at least 7 men.
So, tell me about that meeting before the when Arnold all of a sudden showed up at the meeting and then everybody knew he was going in it.
They knew he was going in it before the meeting. That's why the meeting was held.
Oh, okay.
Because before that, there were 2 weight categories.
Yeah.
In the Mr. Olympia, and some of the guys there felt that it would be an advantage to Arnold if there's 2 weight categories, because he's definitely going to win the heavyweight, no matter who's there. But if it's overall, it'll be more difficult. And why have an overall? The best man should win.
Right.
So had a meeting to vote on. And we were all asked why we thought there should be 1 or or two classes.
Okay.
And the majority vote was that there should be one class.
Okay.
And that pissed Arnold off of it.
Okay.
Because it was his idea to have two classes so that Franco could win a class years before.
Right.
So, he was well paid off.
Him and Mike Mentzer got into an argument then that day?
Yeah, because Mike Mentzer's reason for voting for one class was that the year before, the only chance he had to be compared with Frank Zane was once in the absolute final.
Right.
And Arnold said, "You didn't win because you had a fat belly."
Oh, I see. Okay. And that's when they got.
Because Mike went for him, and Bill Kerr and Ben Weeder got between him, and Ken Waller jumped up, Franco jumped up, and
really,
Dennis Tinrino jumped up.
Wow.
Because I don't know why he doesn't like Franco, so I thought, well, here we go. World
It'll be a big
three,
fight,
you know?
Right?
But it calmed down. It all calmed down.
Wow. So what were your thoughts on that show, Roy? Because I know even today, many years later, that's still one of the most controversial Mr. Olympias ever.
Well, Bill Pearl was backstage, and he had wearing a tuxedo because he was supposed to have done the commentary. I think it was for ABC.
Okay.
TV. And I said to him, "Why are you back here, Bill? I thought you was doing the commentary." And he said, "I'm having nothing to do with this fiasco." I said, "Oh." So he said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think Arnold's going to be a little bit disappointed." He said, "No, he isn't. And that's why I'm having nothing to do with it."
So Bill knew that Arnold was going to win.
I had phone calls from Mike Mentzer telling me that he had newspaper reports from Australia where a court case was going on between the people who were making pumping iron, whoever they were, I forget now, and ABC, because ABC had bought the film rights.
Okay.
And this company were there filming what was supposed to, or what was going to be Pumping Iron 2.
Right.
And it came out in court that Paul Graham knew that Arnold was competing 7 months before.
Okay.
All right. And Mike said, I want you to boycott Arnold's show. Anything Arnold does. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. You know.
He said this after the 1980 Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he never competed again after that.
Yeah, I know. That was his last contest. Yeah.
Yeah. He was disgusted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you feel Arnold should have placed? Where would you have placed him, being up on stage with him and everything?
It's when you're on stage, you can't really see it the way the judges can. But
yeah, that's true.
Looking at people backstage, I thought that he was lucky to place higher than fifth.
Okay.
This is my opinion.
Yeah.
And I was an Arnold fan. I mean, like, I grew up in bodybuilding with Arnold, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you know, when I was first started training, he was only 19, and he was second in the Mr. Universe, and you know, I grew up with him, and he was like me, like an idol, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I was quite sad to see him compete, looking the way he did, because he wasn't the old Arnold. In the photographs, he looked fantastic.
Yeah, he does look good in the photographs.
And the movie that was banned, he still made use of. He called it Total Rebuild or something.
Yeah.
So he still used the footage of it, so he earned money from it.
What did he look like in person, Paul? What was he lacking that we don't see in the photos?
What do you mean in Australia?
Yeah. When you saw him in Australia, you said in person he didn't look good, but
he looked much smaller, shall we say.
Okay.
But he still looked, in the photographs, he looks the biggest guy on stage.
Yeah.
But really, I think the two biggest guys on stage was Dennis Tinrino and Roger Walker.
Yeah.
I think, personally, I thought Roger Walker was hard done by.
He was what?
Hard done by. I thought he should have placed higher than he did.
Okay.
should have been done better. He looked very, very good.
What about Frank Zane? How did he look?
He looked incredible. He looked a little bit leaner, but he had an accident.
Yeah.
Previously. He'd been in hospital, whatever. But condition-wise, he looked as though he'd been carved out of glass.
Really? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How about Chris Dickerson?
Chris Dickerson looked very, very good.
Yeah.
I felt if either Boyer Coe, Mike Menser, or Chris Dickerson, or even Frank Zane, if any of those four won, I don't think it could be disputed.
Right.
Like the difference between them must be less than 0.5%,
really?
If anything.
Yeah.
And so that was my opinion.
Yeah. Who would you have placed in first?
Hard to say.
Yeah.
I think as good as Frank Zane was, I thought on that day, Mike Menser and Boyer Coe were better. I wouldn't like to split the two.
Yeah.
I'd have a nightmare trying to judge that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested to hear people's opinions who were there, because you read so much about it. And like you said, people see the photographs and they make their own opinions. But I like to hear from people who were actually there to, hear what they thought.
I must say, this is definitely the truth. The photographs do Arnold a lot of credit.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you look at the photographs, you could see how he could have won. He's not his best, but you could still see how he should have won. It always amazed me, Chris, that you were in shape at every one of those shows throughout the year, and then when you got to the Olympia, which was in Sydney, Australia that year in 1980, you were in even better shape. You were, for that contest, I thought that was one of your best appearances ever. You were big, you were thick, you were ripped, your posing was right on point, so that was an amazing condition.
I think 1980 in Sydney, Australia, and I can say it was my best year.
Wow, okay.
Not 82, but 80 was really, I look at my physique, I was a little more ripped in 82, but I didn't have quite the thickness.
Yeah.
And my body, and I thought, okay, good, Chris. But also in 1980, we'll never have another lineup like that was.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Look at those guys. So I was disappointed being second to Arnold, but I was so naive, I thought, well, Arnold Schwarzenegger is Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'll come back.
Yeah.
People were furious. How could they do that?
Right.
And the Australian Association presented me with the winner's trophy. They came over on Qantas Airlines and met me at Gold's Gym and said, Chris Dickerson, Mr. Olympia 1980.
Was that?
Never talked about that because I respect Arnold and he was the official Mr. Olympia.
Right.
That is true. That holds true still today, of course.
Right. I want to ask you a little bit more about that show, Chris, because that was like 35 years ago now, and it's still one of the most talked about Mr. Olympias ever. But did you know that Arnold was getting ready for that show, or was that just a big surprise to everybody on the day of the contest?
I knew it, but I wasn't threatened by it because and especially when I saw him, and Arnold, don't get mad, but I sort of felt he's a great champion, and he's not ready for this. Look at him. And he was sweating. He was obviously he was nervous.
Yeah.
Had a lot to lose. And so, and I just looked at other people and I thought, well, the guy who really, who I was afraid of? Not afraid of.
Yeah.
Little Danny Padilla. Was ready for that contest.
Really?
And others, and there were other people, and I can't think of names now, but what a lineup that was.
Mike Menser, Frank Zane.
Frank Zane, yeah. And he's like the outgoing champion. I mean, he's the current champion.
Right.
So I thought, well, I've got to be in here someplace, but I looked at these guys, and I believe, there was Oh, the African American from Florida who was so good many times. He never won the AAU Mr. America. Many people felt he should have. Robbie Robinson.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, these guys were. So I thought, okay. When I saw him, so when they called me for second, I said, oh, I guess Arnold won. But I wasn't upset. Other people were.
Yeah.
I thought, well, heck, from sixth to second in 1 year, not bad.
Right.
What really upset me was the year after that in '81 when Franco won.
Now in '80, Bill. I'm sorry, Chris. Bill Pearl was.
Fine, I accept that.
Bill Pearl was supposed to be a judge, right? And then he recused himself away from the judging panel because he had trained you for the contest.
Yes, well, he did out of fairness, and it was just preordained. The whole thing was really it was set up like a turkey shoot. I mean, it was, no way I could have won that, or anybody else but Arnold.
Yeah. Where would you have placed Arnold, Chris?
Honestly, about sixth, maybe.
Really? Yeah. It's funny that show is so crazy because when people look at pictures and stuff, a lot of people say, well, I see how Arnold should have won. But every time I talk to someone like yourself or Bill Pearl, or I just did an interview with Samir Bannout, everybody who was there at the show said he should have placed about fifth or sixth.
Yes. But Arnold has a way about him that transcends his body. I have to give him credit.
Yeah.
Very charismatic, and he's so self-assured, at least during the competition.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about his being nervous backstage.
Mm-hmm.
He was noticeably nervous backstage. But
why do you say he was nervous, Chris? What was he doing? Just sweating? And
he was sweating a lot, profusely, toweling off, because he seemed in doubt, but had he known it was just decided that he'd win, but maybe he didn't know. I'm not sure. I can't say it.
Yeah.
In 1980, when you got into that, when you had that injury, you were looking really good too, right? Right before that injury, right, Frank? Weren't you even bigger than you were in 79?
I was like over 200 pounds, and if that didn't happen, I would have been in great shape of my life. But, I basically shouldn't have gone in that year.
Yeah.
I was in the hospital, and I talked to Arnold, and I said, Arnold, what do you think I should do? I said, I understand that you're going in. He said, no, I'm just going to go over there and do commentary. I said, what do you think I should do? He says, well, you should go to Australia and defend your title. And so I did, because I used to go to him for advice all the time when he wasn't competing.
Right.
And he'd tell me every little thing that needed to be improved. And so I sort of, I relied on him, but, he basically backstabbed me.
Mm-hmm.
Got me up. And I guess he's just getting even because in 1979, I'm walking off his coated hair and his tuxedo, and he says, Frank, how does it feel to win Mr. Olympia for the third time? And I said, Arnold, it feels even better than when I beat you for Mr. Universe. And it made it on ABC. And he was so pissed off. He called me on the phone and he's screaming at me.
Oh, really?
How could you talk against me, blah. I said, Arnold, you have a great sense of humor when the joke's not on you. Just lighten up.
Right.
But that was it. He
Yeah.
vowed to go and take me out, and he did next year.
Well, so how did you feel that Arnold should have did in 1980? Because I've heard all kinds of stories about, some people feel he should have won. A lot of people feel he should have won.
Whether or not I should have won, that's debatable. Because, I had that accent. I wasn't at my best. I was very defined. But, my face was like a death mask. Mentally looked good. I thought Boyer Coe looked really good. Arnold, maybe fifth place.
Really?
I'd say maybe Boyer Coe, Menser, me to win. Chris Dickerson next.
Yeah, I remember you made a good point. You were interviewed by a magazine back then, and you said when you only have 8 weeks to train, your strong points will come back. Like his biceps came back, his chest. But, the triceps were weak, the legs were weak, right? But
he had what was it? 8 out of 9 judges in his pocket.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It all depends on the judges. If you look down and you see those judges, if they look like you or they resemble you or you know them and you're friends, guess what? Probably going to vote for you. And that's the thing. A judge only votes what he's familiar with. Basically, they're looking for themselves in other people. When they look at you, they're looking for themselves. And if they resemble you, you got it. And it doesn't bother me. I mean, it was just a great lesson.
Yeah. Now, do you wish you would have went in 81 when Franco won? Because that was back in Columbus.
I wish I would have done that.
Yeah.
I wish I would have bowed out in 80 and went in 81 because I would have wiped them out.
Yeah. And that would have been interesting because that was kind of politically, it looked very politically motivated, you know. So I wonder.
He looked good. Flash looked pretty good, you know, except the thighs are way too big for the rest of them. But Franco wasn't that good. He had a bitch tit and a gimp leg.
Yeah, yeah.
Yet he won.
Yeah.
6.
Yeah. I wonder what the judges would have done if you would have came in better than ever, better than 79. I mean,
they would have had to give it to me.
Yeah, they would have had to, right? Right.
I saw Arnold do the same thing in the 80 Olympia.
Right.
He wasn't doing the compulsory poses, and the head judge said, "Arnold," he says, "look, do the compulsory poses, or we're going to disqualify you." And Arnold just kept doing what he wanted to do. And the guy's name was Dennis Stallard, I remember, from Wales. Says to him, he says, "Arnold, you're disqualified. Get off the stage."
Really?
So he did get off the stage, and that night Stallard was fired, and they sent him back to England.
Wow, no kidding. I didn't know that.
See,
wow,
so that's the lesson there. When you're a favorite like that, and you're in cahoots with the organizers, you can pretty much do whatever you want. That's what Bill Pearl did in you know, the 71 universe. They told him, you know, the show was on the side, and he wouldn't do it. I said, whoa, you can get away with anything when you're a favorite.
Right.
They saw it with Pearl, and they saw it with Arnold.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the that 1980 Mr. Olympia, because that's still today, Samir, is probably the most controversial, one of the most controversial Mr. Olympias ever. So you go down to Australia to compete in that show. You didn't know that Arnold was competing in that, right? When you went down there.
No, I didn't know. I knew he was competing.
Oh, you did?
Because I was training along his side. I was training at World Gym, and I knew Arnold was going to compete.
Okay.
And he, in fact, listen, I'm being honest. I don't care. You know, if it's Arnold, I'll tell you. If not, I'll tell you. But Arnold prepared, and he looked really good 1 month before the show. I'm watching him. He looked really good. I felt like, wow.
Really?
Arnold, no, I'm not kidding. He was better. But what these guys don't understand, and Arnold, his own word told me, he had a major rotator cuff.
Okay.
It's a major problem. And he injected cortisone.
Yeah.
Because you really can't do much unless you take cortisone, isn't that?
Yeah.
You know, so evidently, according to Arnold, it did backfire. And it made him take tons of water.
Yeah.
So that's the complication that Arnold had. And really, I wasn't impressed with Arnold backstage in Sydney.
Hey, let me
I know you asked me this question.
Yeah, I asked you before. I know. Let me ask you about that. The meeting of the day of the show when Arnold shows up and everybody realizes now he's competing, and there was a big argument between Arnold and Boyer Coe, and then Arnold and Mike Menser. And is it true that Mike Menser and Arnold almost went at it?
Yes.
What happened there?
You see, Arnold, in my opinion, now getting to know him, he had a strategy because somebody pulled that strategy on me too, but that's another story. Arnold would do whatever it takes to mess up other contestants. You know what? Why not? More power to him.
Right.
He's not putting the gun in their hair or anything. He's just like,
yeah.
They were complaining about one class or two classes, and then Arnold told Mike, I said, why are you afraid? You this and that, look at you let your belly hang. And so pulled out the mic. And the way he said that got Mike really pissed off. And so he knew how to get under the skin for the fact he wasn't really want to hurt him, but you know, the verbal insults kind of get their adrenaline flowing. And so Arnold is sitting there right here. Ken Waller. I was sitting next to Waller, and then Casey Vieto. So his best defense was nearby. So,
So what
you
did
know,
what did Menser
Mike,
do? Menser went up to him and was pointing his finger at him, or what happened?
yeah, Mike moved in like a raging bull.
Really? Wow. So it looked like there was gonna be a fight.
Arnold got up, and then boom! Before you know it, we all stopped.
Oh, really? Arnold got up?
Yeah, Arnold was sitting in a, just I think it was like a box. It wasn't even a chair, but
Yeah.
he got up. But Mike started. Mike came in angry, and then we intercepted him in time.
Wow. Wow.
And then come Ben, we asked if Fade, Bill Pro were there, Boyer. So
Yeah.
calm him down. And I guess Arnold, he got what he wanted out of it, to get everybody angry, get them all worked out.
Right.
He wasn't really ready, so he might as well let the other guy look bad.
Hey,
So
what did Arnold say to you? I saw that picture where he's like sort of slapping your hand in the backstage. What was he saying to you?
he says, I don't know what these guys like complaining like babies and right. I mean, what the hell's wrong with these guys? You don't have fun? Give me five. I'm like, give them five because I knew I was going to compete with my idol.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, no matter what, I wasn't going to fight with Arnold. I'm there having fun. My first Mr. Olympia.
Oh, he said that. He said that after all the fighting after Menser came after him.
No, it was only like a couple minute thing and stopped.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it stopped, and there was an intense atmosphere for sure. And then everybody gone his separate way, and then there was a prejudging later.
Yeah.
And I looked at Arnold when he took his shirt off. I was really like, what? That's not the same guy I saw in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
He was
Wow.
really, he was depleted. And you have a layer. See, when you deplete, when you not as full and you have subcutaneous fluid, because hormonal fluid is much worse than sodium fluid.
Right.
You have hormonal fluid that comes in like a sticky, like a glue, that caused by cortisol or by aldosterone.
Right.
But the sodium fluid is different. Believe me, not everybody have the eyes for that.
Huh. Okay. Let's go back to 1980, Samir. When the prejudging started, and they're calling out Chris Dickerson, they're calling out Mike Menser, Boyer Coe, Roger Walker, and then they call out Arnold. How did you think it was all going to play out? Did you think Arnold was going to win, or did you think someone else was going to win? What did you think was going to happen?
Honestly, I didn't see Arnold winning. I didn't.
Okay.
I actually, that's the most. Dickerson looked gnarly. Menser, Boyer looked good, but I think Boyer had a certain reason needed to be better, in my opinion. But he was hard.
Uh-huh.
I thought Dickerson, Mike Menser, and actually all the other guys,
Zane.
Frank Zane,
Yeah.
they were really all ahead of Arnold.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. It's interesting you say that because, like people who weren't there and now, 35 years later, they're looking at the pictures, they're looking at the video, and they think, oh, I think Arnold should have won. But it seems like everybody I talked to who was there, whether they were competing or they were watching it, almost everybody who was there thinks Arnold shouldn't have won.
I am Arnold's #1 fan. I admire Arnold a lot.
Yeah.
Seriously. And if anyone wanted to win that day, I would want Arnold or probably Zane. And I was a friend with Mike Menser.
Yeah.
But the truth must be told. Arnold was not in the top 5. I would vote him out of the top 5.
Okay.
I'm telling you, and I mean it.
Yeah.
Tell Arnold that.
Right.
This is the way it is.
Yeah.
God is perfect, buddy. We all have mistakes. We all are we all can get in the hole sometimes. So you know, but you know the thing is about Arnold. Sometimes he says and he admits things, and like we'll talk to him about Sergio Oliva when he competed in essays. He goes, Jamia, when I went backstage, I saw Sergio. I couldn't believe my eyes. I'm gonna beat this. And guess Arnold won. He said he couldn't believe he won that show.
Yeah, yeah.
He's treated like that. You know, he's a true champion. He's not like about to.
Right.
But I guess whoever voted for Arnold to win, it could be like Paul Graham.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pinpoint, but did Arnold orchestrate that? Do I know that for sure? No. So I'm not gonna point finger at Arnold.
Right, right.
Because I've done it so many times. So what's the big deal?
Yeah.
What is 7 times, dude?
Yeah, right, right.
I mean, but it's good to tell the story as it was, and that is my opinion.
Yeah.
No, Arnold was not in my top 5.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear from you because you were there and you were right on stage with them and you got to see it. So yeah. What was it like after the show? What was the aftermath after the show? I heard Frank Zane busted his trophy and Mike Menser was all mad.
I don't blame them. I don't blame them because really they deserve better.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was going to break my trophy, but I mean, the guys busted their ass to get in that kind of condition.
Yeah.
Feel like the guy, you know, like Arnold, because Arnold is the Terminator, Arnold is a movie star, Arnold is everything. And so, you know what? You come here and then you'll walk away with a trophy, with our title. So they kind of, it was hard for them to accept it.
Yeah, yeah.
It was neutral. I was like, oh, well, it happened.
Right.
And I mean, I witnessed one of the craziest things ever in the history of the sport from my first show.
So then in 1980, it was going back to Australia for the first time ever. Did that really motivate you, knowing that it was going to be in Australia?
You're going to get me into trouble here. Go on, sorry.
That's all right. So it was coming to Australia in 1980. When you heard that, did that really motivate you to train hard for that Olympia that year?
I didn't train any harder for the Sydney Olympia than I did any other.
Okay.
Because I knew it was going to be. I knew that was going to be harder for me than for the visitors.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the promoter and the president of the IFBB,
Paul Graham,
and myself fell out a long, long time ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that was Paul Graham, right? The promoter of the show?
Correct.
Yeah. When did you guys have a falling out?
I think early 79.
Oh, the year before. Okay.
Early 79, maybe 78, we fell out.
Okay. Did you feel that was going to hurt your placing at the show?
Definitely.
Yeah.
But 80 wasn't as bad. 80 was a show, it wasn't a contest.
Uh-huh.
You understand the difference.
Right, right. So did you know Arnold was going in it before the show?
Yes.
You did? How long before the show did you know?
A number of weeks.
Oh, really? Okay. Because a lot of the competitors were surprised that he was there and they didn't know. But you knew, being from Australia, you knew?
I'd heard in the grapevine, and it made sense that he would, in light of the fact that Paul Graham was the promoter.
Okay. Because him and Arnold were friends?
More than friends.
Okay. Did you feel that it had something to do with that movie, The Comeback? That's what I heard. I heard that they gave Paul the contest so he could do a movie that was going to be similar to Pumping Iron.
Have you read the article that was in Iron Brothers, Once Upon a Time in Australia?
I don't think so. No. Who wrote that?
It's anonymous.
Okay.
But you'd have to read that, and that would lay out the full details of what happened in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why? And if I could go back to one of the points, why on earth would Ben Weider give the Olympia to a convicted criminal from Australia
Right.
Why would he give him his baby?
Right. Right.
That's the question that begs. It was only the second time. The first time it was held in Germany. It was the first time out of America.
Mm-hmm.
And the second time, Paul Graham, who is a convicted criminal, convicted of criminality in California, as it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Why would Joe Weider or Ben Weider present Paul with this gift?
Right.
Now, and my other point is, who in their right mind could possibly believe that Arnold woke up one morning in sunny California and decided 8 weeks out, after 5 years in retirement,
Mm-hmm.
that he was going to compete in an Olympia that at that scale he'd never competed in before.
Right.
This wasn't 3 people, 2 people,
Right.
just a couple of people. This was 30-odd people, compulsory poses, etc., etc., etc.
Right.
He'd never gone through these things.
Right. Right.
Why would he put his reputation on the line 8 weeks out? Doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it does make sense if you believe that obviously Paul Graham knew that he would have the Olympia a year out. So I believe that as Paul was awarded the Olympia, it was ipso facto that Arnold was going to be awarded, not win, would be awarded the number 1 position.
Right.
It was a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute no-brainer. So, I mean, the next year was just as interesting.
Yeah, I was at that one.
Where a guy with one leg won the contest.
Right. Right.
I mean, it turned into vaudeville.
Yeah.
It was vaudeville. It was
Yeah.
a joke. He insulted us, and then Arnold, apart from that, insulted us all by saying, I've done, in his accent, I won't even try to pull it off, I've done in 8 weeks what these guys have been training for 52 friggin' weeks.
Right.
Right? So, apart from that, he insulted us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my other point is, I doubt very much whether Paul Graham actually paid him the prize money. Because there were some dynamics going on behind the scenes, and if you read that article, you'll see what. And I'm not going to tell you what they are now because I could be sued.
Okay.
But when you read it, you'll see the facts. Lots of people know those facts and choose to ignore them.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, one guy on Facebook said, look, it's been a long time, 1980 was a long time ago, let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Let it go.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that the other night. I'm thinking, well, if I saw a guy with a watch, he was wearing this watch, and it was so precious and expensive that they only made one a year, that it was almost beyond money, and he was wearing it, and I knew he had stolen it. Should I say, oh, nice watch? Or should I say, why are you wearing a stolen watch?
Mm-hmm.
Or what should I say?
Right.
What would you do? What would you say?
I'd say, why are you wearing a stolen watch?
Yeah, but so Arnold is wearing a stolen watch.
Mm-hmm.
Stole it.
Right. Right.
He committed fraud with the help of all his friends.
Yeah.
And that is not sour grapes.
Right.
And that is not to say that I deserved any higher placing. I'm just saying the most difficult part of that show, apart from fiddling Arnold's position, was what do they do with the corps ballet? What do they do? How do they place the also-rans?
Mm-hmm.
And that was their biggest problem.
Right.
What should we do? Should we put Zane in there? What do we do? Oh, who cares? Let's pull a hat. Let's pull a rabbit out of a hat.
Right,
okay.
Right.
And what happened the second year was just disgraceful.
Yeah.
So, was there any need?
In 1980, when you guys were all getting ready to go out and you're pumping up and you looked at Arnold, what did you think? What did you think of his physique?
Not ready.
Not ready.
Not ready.
Not big enough, or not cut enough, or both?
Just not ready. Not in contest shape.
Yeah.
I'd seen Arnold.
Right. You saw him at his best.
The first time I saw Arnold was in '72, and I thought, wow.
Yeah.
And I don't say that very often. Well, I didn't say that very often. So, wow. But I didn't say that then. And he was human then.
Yeah.
Up to 74. 75 was a bit dodgy, but up to 74, he wasn't human.
Wow.
He was beyond the pack.
Wow. Yeah.
He looked better than his pictures.
Yeah.
Okay? When you saw him in the flesh, he looked way better than his pictures.
Wow. That's amazing.
75, he was clever. But again, he managed to manipulate two people. Lou, who's, and Serge Newbray, who, interestingly enough, actually won the world presidency that year. But the guy who was counting the votes managed to save Ben's backside.
What did he win? What did Serge win?
Well, every year at the World Championships, the position of president, world president, was up for grabs.
Okay.
Up to 75. Serge was president of Europe and president of France, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So he carried most of Europe. He carried the West Indies, and he carried a lot of the African countries. Frank Burles was there when they voted. Certainly they won the vote. He actually won it at the ballot. Who was counting the votes? Oscar State. So Oscar State recounted them, and Ben won. Because shortly after that, Ben was announced as president for life. They weren't going to have any more of this nonsense.
Right.
They didn't need to pretend that they were the Democratic Republic of Congo. Right. Forget about the democratic bit. Let's just be president for life. Okay. So that's what he became. And of course, Serge then got purged.
Right.
And he was purged because they accused him of making blue movies.
Right.
Which was kind of cute.
Was that in 1975 that they did that?
That was in 75.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, they kept him in limbo for a couple of days, stewing. And then finally said, okay, you can enter the Olympia. Otherwise, it's just going to be Arnold and his little mate.
Yeah.
So he could make up the numbers. He did make up the numbers. But those 2 or 3 days had probably mentally disintegrated him.
Yeah.
And that was enough.
So why did they get him out? Just because he would have won that vote?
He did win.
Yeah.
And Ben didn't want his baby, his IFBB, to get taken over by anybody else.
Right.
It was only meant to look like a democracy. It wasn't really supposed to be one in the way that it operated.
Right.
And it certainly isn't now, is it?
No.
Probably degraded even more. Frank Burles was there at the time and became completely despondent in regard to what he saw, because he believed that he'd actually joined an international organisation that was fair dinkum, that was fair and square.
Right.
And very soon afterwards, he left in disgust and wanted no more to do with it. So, sad. Maybe a little naive, but sad.
That's when Paul Graham took over then, after that?
Well, Paul sort of stole the presidency. Most of the bodybuilders in Australia voted him out of the National Federation. He rang Ben and cried on his shoulder and said, Ben, they've taken the IFBB off of me. And Ben patted him on the shoulder, reassured him it's okay, form another organisation. That's the only one that the IFBB will recognise, and they can all get staffed. And that's what he did.
Okay.
And we still have the same criminal in charge in Australia today, which is why we now have at least 4 different organisations, because nobody really wants anything to do with Paul Bannout.
Okay.
And I don't want to come across as a whinging, whining person. It's a shame.
Yeah. Let me take you back to 1980, because I heard when at the prejudging, I heard you and Arnold were sort of standing next to each other, trading elbows with each other during the mandatories.
That wasn't. I didn't take that as being aggressive.
Yeah.
I didn't take offence. It was just part of the. I'm in my light, and I'm not moving.
Yeah.
You've been on stage, you know what it's like. You find the light.
Right.
You stay in the light. You don't walk away from that light.
Right.
And you don't give ground to someone else who wants to stand in your light. Right. That's all that happened.
Okay.
It wasn't about to break out into violence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which would have been good for the show, but
no, it would have been great.
It was never going to be a violent thing. Just I wasn't giving way. Arnold wasn't giving way.
Right.
I didn't take offense. Okay.
Were you backstage when him and Menser almost got into it?
I was right there.
Yeah. What happened there?
The meeting was going on quite smoothly. Everyone was deciding whether there was going to be 2 classes or 1. Everyone decided that, why not 1? Arnold wanted 2 classes because he'd already figured that he'd gone through the WWF show book, playbook, and decided that this is how he wanted to compete against a shorter guy at the fight. Because he was already going to be the tall guy, right?
Right.
He already decided. And out of the blue and out of context, he made some snidey and childish remark about Mike Menser's guts. Mike took offence. Unfortunately, and this is the saddest part, unfortunately, he was stopped. Because I had ringside seats, and I thought, wow, this is going to be great. I'm going to see, that movie, The Clash of the Titans.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, it's going to be great. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to watch this bit. It's nothing like watching a good fight, right?
Right.
Enjoy the fight. Stand in the corner of a bar and just drink away quietly and watch them kick the living crap out of each other. That's my right? But unfortunately, it was stopped.
Yeah. Was Menser ready to hit him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I reckon he would have taken him out, too.
Yeah. And Bill Pearl stopped him, right?
I think it was Ben.
Oh, Ben, yeah.
I think Ben stepped in.
Okay.
It was very, very funny. I was roaring with laughter. I thought the funniest things I've ever seen. Because, bodybuilding contests, everyone's in great shape.
Right.
Lots of testosterone.
Right.
But it's all pent up. And you can't actually, well, you'd like to sometimes, sure. I mean, you'd like to smack someone.
Right.
When it's really aggressive.
Right.
But that's it. It's like sleeping with a woman without actually going there, right?
Right. Right.
It's very frustrating because there is no physical thing to it apart from the posing, which is done properly.
Right.
It can be harder than people think.
Right.
It's actual head-on physical aggression.
Right.
That's why I thought this is great. Maybe that's just me.
What was the prejudging like? How was Arnold acting on stage? I heard like Bill Pearl said he was like the most aggressive competitor he ever saw.
He was doing exactly what he wanted. And Oscar State, who was supposed to be controlling the stage, was letting him get away with doing anything he wanted.
Right.
He was warned constantly and warned about being disqualified. But obviously, that was never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If I'd have done that, I would have been out of my ear.
Right, right. Who did you feel were the top competitors that year, as far as the condition of the athletes? Who did you feel was the top guys?
I think the top 5. No, from 2 to 8. From
Okay.
2 until 8.
Yeah.
That was about 2 to 8 was fair.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you make your own choices as far as the body type you like.
Yeah. Yeah.
From those 8 people. So I'm
Right.
not going to speculate on positions. I'd say that take Arnold out because he wouldn't have made the 8. He wouldn't have made the 7 either. So from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
I think Dennis Tenorino was 8.
Yeah. Yeah.
In there. Roy Callender was. I've seen Roy in better shape.
Mm-hmm.
In the 80. I think he was a little off. I think he was lucky to get that high.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, from 2 to 8, which would have been where the proper contest would have begun.
So you wouldn't even have Arnold in that top 8 then?
No.
Wow. Roger, what do you say?
I was standing next to him. I was looking right up close. I know what he looks like. And people try to fiddle on Facebook. They play around with photographs.
Right.
They use photographs from the wrong year and say, this is, but it's not, that wasn't 18. They pick and choose. He wasn't in shape. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I've talked to quite a few people who were at that contest. I talked to Bill Pearl. I talked to Samir Bannout. I talked to Boyer Coe, Chris Dickerson. And everybody said Arnold was 5th or lower. And it's funny when you see, like you talked about Facebook, when you see the pictures or you hear the bodybuilding forums and people argue about it, the people that weren't there always say, well, he wasn't at his best, but I could see how he could win because he still looks better than everyone else. But everybody that was there said that he shouldn't have even placed in the top 5.
Well, no. With respect to Arnold, his best year was 74.
Right.
He was fortunate in 75. He should have left it at that.
Yeah.
There was no need. His movie career would have carried on just as well.
Yeah.
What did he do? He made a laughing stock. The film crew that came over from America to film it put the film in the trash can.
Right.
It's never seen the light of day. It's been destroyed.
Right.
But they thought that bodybuilders were just a bunch of wankers and cheats. Probably they thought it was a joke.
Mm-hmm.
So, as far as I'm concerned, he sullied, he besmirched the reputation of bodybuilding for his own ego.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's what he did.
Yeah.
Stole the watch.
Yeah. So after the show was over, what was the feeling of the crowd and everything after it was announced? That Arnold won and everybody placed where they placed.
Well, Arnold had never been booed before. Now in that movie, I think the booing they dubbed out the booing.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was that much booing that you couldn't hear him talking.
Wow, really?
They wouldn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
They just wouldn't stop. And even Arnold who wasn't expecting that booing, who thought he could pull this WWF thing off.
Yeah.
That making it off the ropes, makes the comeback, and he's won again.
Yeah.
He looked decidedly embarrassed. The booing wouldn't stop. The crowd didn't like it. And I would say everybody in the room was booing.
Wow. No kidding. Everybody in the room.
Everybody in the house was booing.
Wow. No kidding.
Because it doesn't matter what country you're from, we can all smell bullshit.
Bodybuilding Heroes and Legends Volume 1 by John Hansen is the book that celebrates the golden age of bodybuilding. This was the era in which legends such as Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sergio Oliva, Frank Zane, Robbie Robinson, Cal Scalak, and Mike Menser battled it out on stage for the biggest titles in bodybuilding. Read about some of the most exciting competitions that took place in the 1970s, including the Oliva-Schwarzenegger battles, Zane's first Olympia victory, and Scalak's controversial Mr. Olympia appearance, and much more. Filled with inspiring images of some of the greatest bodybuilders in the history of the sport, Bodybuilding Heroes and Legends Volume 1 is now available on Amazon.com or email John directly at naturalolympia@gmail.com.